Welcome, Mizzou fans and hoopheads alike. This is Matt Watkins, and we're previewing each player in Mizzou's roster in the lead up to the 2025-2026 Mizzou Tiger basketball campaign. In today's episode, we'll be featuring freshman Aaron Rowe. Every so often, a prospect gains local legend status. Some of the key components to that are an early developing player, someone with exciting athleticism, and maybe someone who comes from a smaller town like, say, Columbia, Missouri. In other words, we're talking about a guy like Aaron Rowe. He's been on the radar for Columbia residents and Mizzou fans for quite some time. Aaron Rowe debuted in the top 30 of prospect rankings in the spring of 2023, his sophomore year. He committed to Mizzou in the winter of his junior season, which would have been during the 2023-2024 campaign. Ever since then, it's kind of been a bit of a downhill slide in the rankings. In the last ratings by 24/7 Sports, their composite ratings, he had slipped to 148th nationally. The Father Tolton product took a brief detour from Link Academy before coming back to Tolton High School to finish out his career. When you look at a guy like Aaron Rowe, you have to realize that guys kind of develop at their own speed. You know, Rowe burst onto the scene for a lot of reasons, but mostly because he was an exciting athlete. He's incredibly quick, has great athleticism, and the thought was that his skill would kind of catch up to his athleticism. But the thing is, some of his shooting, it never really did. And that's not a fault of Aaron Rowe necessarily. It's just how players develop. Despite the circuitous route, he is in Columbia now and has underwent his first full summer workout schedule with the Tigers. And perhaps with a different set of eyes on him, he can kind of get his ship back on track and deliver on that local legend status. Now, whether he can, that remains to be seen. A jump up to Division I basketball is a big jump to make, especially for a freshman. So, when we look at his biographical information, he is a freshman. He's a point guard. He is listed at 6'2", 155 pounds. He is a Columbia, Missouri native, and he played for Father Tolton High School, the same high school that the Porters played with. And he also played his summer ball with MoCan in the Elite Youth Basketball League. When we look at his role in the first year, his developmental track will be tested early. Mizzou is not particularly deep at the guard position, but it is quite stacked with experience and with returning production. When we look at players ahead of him, we're talking about an Anthony Robinson, who has the potential to be an All-SEC selection this year. Another guy, Sebastian Mack. He was a transfer averaging 10 points a game for a UCLA team that ended up in the NCAA tournament. You also have a T.O. Barrett ahead of him. He saw meaningful minutes as a freshman, including in a big win in Gainesville, which aged pretty well. But he often saw quite a bit of time. So when you think about Aaron Rowe having to not only develop his skill set, but overtake those players, that's a big jump. And then you've also got a guy like Jaden Stone, who Dennis Gates brought in, who's a 6-year transfer from West Virginia and has played at Detroit and Grand Canyon prior to that. So, his road to playing time isn't going to be easy. However, when you look at freshmen, especially in this program, it's not always imperative that the guys get early minutes to become good players as sophomores or beyond. Unlike the front court, which is long on possibilities for playing time and short on answers, the back court is kind of the opposite. The pecking order is fairly solidified, and breaking into the rotation will mean good things done by Rowe, or things that maybe aren't so good that we don't want to talk about with the remaining players. So it would also mean a heavy and inverse course correction of form from where his prep career had been heading. And that's, again, not a knock on him. It's just that when you look at a guy who had the promise but didn't quite deliver on it before coming to college, to really expect him to jump in and be a major contributor year one, that may be kind of a reach. So it doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does call for caution when parsing out playing time and roles. Anything Rowe earns in year one will in fact be earned. In my opinion, his best path will be relying on his physical attributes of speed and burst to allow his potential as a true distributing point guard to take forth and shine. So when we look at projections, as far as where I have him slotted, I see him playing probably not more than 4 or 5 minutes a game, which would average 12th on the roster. His usage rate, how many possessions he uses while he's on the court, I think that could be a little bit higher just by virtue of where he plays. I see that checking in at about 18%, which is 8th on the team. But then when you get to the points, again, the playing time, I think, is going to kind of knock him down and cap what he's able to do, at least early on. And I see him averaging maybe 1 point a game, 1 to 2 if things go well. But again, that's not because he won't be a good player. It's just that I think he's going to be really squeezed when it comes to playing time this year. And if that's where he ends up, I see that about 12th on the roster. So we don't have a whole lot to go on with Aaron Rowe in terms of statistics and what have you. So what we're going to do now is look primarily at his film. And this came from his time with Mocan in the summer of 2024. And we'll kind of get a feel for what we're getting in an Aaron Rowe and what he has to offer. So Aaron Rowe is number 1. He's wearing the dark jersey here. What I want to focus in on here is something that I really think can be a benefit to Mizzou and for Aaron Rowe coming to Mizzou, and that's his ability to show burst and really burn down the court as a ball handler. Missouri probably doesn't have a player quite like him on the roster this year, someone who is able to get it and go as quickly as he can. He can really push the tempo in the open court, and he has a knack for getting to the rim and finishing when he gets there. And something else you'll see is, despite his size, he really does have some impressive ups. And another thing I really like when watching Aaron Rowe is not only his scoring ability, but he does have a good feel for the game and feel for finding teammates, whether that's in transition, as we just saw there, or in the half court. Always the ability to look ahead. As we know, watching Missouri, that's very important. Missouri likes to run the lanes down the sidelines, and being able to hit outlet passes quickly and accurately, that's a big component. Now we're going to get a little bit more into his half-court game. And again, his vision and his feel for the game, being able to parse out defenses when he's running ball screens. I think that's something that has improved and something that he can rely on, at least early on, is to be more of a distributor as opposed to a scoring point guard. And I think with Mizzou's roster that may not be the biggest need, at least this year, but moving forward, that could be a role that he could really carve out some time for. And that is a look at some of the things that I liked about Aaron Rowe's offensive game. However, there are some faults. And when we talk about his dip in the ratings, what we're going to look at next, I think, is probably why he fell so much and his biggest issue at getting back to where he needs to be is his ability to hit jump shots. Aaron Rowe, during last summer, attempted 45 mid-range jumpers and turned that into a .058 points per possession, which in a word is not good. He was shooting around 30% on those opportunities. And when you shoot that low, it's just not efficient. And it's not something that you can really rely on as a player. And it wasn't just inside the arc where he shot a lot of these short mid-range jumpers, but even on his pull-ups from three-point range, he was really struggling to knock shots down. And when I watched Aaron Rowe in person last winter, a lot of his offensive game was centered around getting inside the arc, taking a few bounces, and taking a pull-up jumper just like this. And he just was not efficient and accurate on those attempts. So, being able to optimize your offensive game, take out the things that you don't do as well, and emphasize the things that you do. I think this is one thing that the staff is probably going to be working with him on is shot selection. According to the records here on Synergy Sports, Aaron Rowe attempted 13 three-point attempts last year and knocked them down for .7 points per possession, which that's not going to cut it. From a long-range specialist, you need more from that, especially from your guards trying to contribute. His shooting has got to improve. And one thing I did notice with Aaron Rowe is that despite that I like him as a primary ball handler, he does get a little loose with the ball. And if you don't have the shot game, the shooting ability to offset some of your other weaknesses as a point guard, you really have to be solid with the ball. And whether that's making the right reads or whenever you absorb contact in transition or in the half court, you've got to be solid with the ball. And I think Aaron Rowe probably was a little too loose with it for my liking. And I think that's something that he's going to have to work on this year as well. Just little bumps are taking him offline. So we have one more set of film to look at here, and that is his defense. And I will be the first to admit, whenever I want to look at defense, we're having a problem here. Whenever I look at defense, the Elite Youth Basketball League is not typically where I go. It can be a little scattershot as far as any defensive ability is concerned and your ability to showcase that. But we've got about 10 clips here that I want to run through to at least show you some of the attributes that he has. What I was impressed with is he's got good lateral quickness. He has the ability to keep guys in front of him. That, of course, being a very important component of once you move up to the Division I basketball level. Does a really nice job of moving his feet, keeps his hands out, has a solid defensive form when guarding on the perimeter. Does a nice job contesting without fouling. Does a nice job contesting at the rim and getting a block. He does have impressive athleticism. I think we've mentioned that. One thing that I wasn't overly taken with was his ability to cause deflections, create steals. I didn't really see a lot of that. That's something that, again, I don't know if that's a virtue of the system he's playing in, the fact that it was, the defense is not always up to snuff in these leagues, but I think that's something that he has the ability to do and will need to show more often. Because I do think he has the quickness and the ability to become pretty good at taking the ball away from opponents. So that's all I have for you on Aaron Rowe. I think the expectation this year should be becoming incorporated in the team, improving his game, not necessarily being a key component of this year's roster. I'm not saying that we can't be surprised in him to make a big jump, but in terms of realistic expectations, I think getting him in his role where he's comfortable and improving incrementally his jump shooting, his ability to make takeaways defensively. I think if you can do that and have him ready to be a contributor in year two, I think that could be qualified as a success. So anyway, that's all I have for you on Aaron Rowe. I hope you're enjoying these player previews. It's one of our many features over at Rock M Plus. We'll be doing one of these for every player on this year's roster. So if you've enjoyed it, let us know. If there's anything that we can do better, also let us know. So with that being said, we'll catch you with the next preview. And until then, take it easy.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.